All right, so buckle up, everyone, because today's deep dive is going to be a wild one.
Oh, yeah.
We're taking a look at this single chapter from a book that people have called mind-bending and hilarious and just completely confusing.
Yeah, I can definitely see why.
It's this crazy mix of hypersphere history with fictional stories, mathematical proofs, and then some pretty heavy philosophy, too.
It's a lot.
Yeah, reading through it for the first time honestly felt like I was trying to solve a maze.
Blindfolded.
Blindfolded, exactly.
But I think what makes this chapter really fascinating is that it's not just a random collection of crazy ideas.
Yeah.
The author is clearly trying to say something with this jumbled structure about, like, the nature of reality itself.
Okay, so to start untangling this, let's jump into the hypersphere history that's presented in this chapter.
Okay.
And the big player here
Yeah.
is, you guessed it, Donald Trump.
Of course, it had to be.
Has like the ultimate superego.
The author choosing Trump, that's definitely not an accident.
Right.
It's like satire at its best, you know? It really shows how someone so absurd can become so powerful and how that power can be used in such destructive ways.
Yeah, this chapter really shows Trump's time in charge with this crazy blend of like absurdity and really insightful commentary. It talks about how he manages to avoid some interdimensional conflict,
Right.
but then commits genocide against the space Mexican people.
It's
Pretty jarring, to say the least.
It is, and I think that jarring effect is intentional. The author's using this really exaggerated portrayal of Trump, almost like a cartoon, to show the danger of, like, unchecked ego and ambition.
Yeah.
And the genocide, even though it's presented satirically,
Right.
makes us think about the real consequences when those tendencies show up.
In the real world.
Exactly, in the real world.
And then on top of all of that, the author uses this weird writing style they call neo-deucing. It's like they're throwing everything in there, humor, satire, things that make no sense together,
Right.
just to make you feel kind of disoriented.
Yeah, like you're not supposed to get comfortable.
Right, exactly.
It keeps you on your toes.
There's even this nursery rhyme about Trump from, like, Gorgonzola or something like that. I don't even...
That's so strange.
It's hilarious, but also kind of creepy.
That nursery rhyme, it's a perfect example of how the author hides meaning in the text.
Okay.
Like, on the surface, it's just silly.
Yeah.
But when you really think about it, it's critiquing how easily we believe propaganda and misinformation, especially when it's presented in a fun way.
It's almost like the author's saying, don't trust anything you read.
Think for yourself.
Think for yourself, yeah.
Question everything.
Exactly.
And just when you think you're starting to understand the satire, the chapter takes a hard turn.
Okay.
It goes from this funny critique of power to this really bleak description of the hyperspacians themselves. They're described as these empty beings with no purpose,
Right.
completely controlled by happenstance and soft determinism.
Wow. It's such a huge difference from those earlier sections.
It is.
It's like the author is suddenly dropping us into an existential crisis.
Exactly.
One minute we're laughing at Trump,
Yeah.
and the next we're forced to think about whether anything even matters.
This sudden change in tone is where the chapter starts to really tackle some huge philosophical questions.
Like what?
Like, if free will is an illusion, do our choices even matter?
That's a big one.
It is. What does it mean to have a purpose
Yes.
if everything is just chance?
And even if we know all that, does it make our lives any less important?
Exactly.
Those are some heavy questions.
They are.
To be honest, I felt pretty lost in that section.
I get it.
It was like being thrown into a philosophy class without any warning.
It's definitely a challenging part.
Yeah.
But I think the author wants us to feel that discomfort.
Okay.
To really confront these complicated ideas head on. It's not about finding easy answers. It's about making us think more deeply.
And just as we're trying to wrap our heads around this idea of a deterministic universe, the chapter throws in another curveball, a mathematical proof by Bertrand Russell.
Out of nowhere.
It's so unexpected.
It is.
It's like finding a math problem in the middle of a dream.
This is where the author's brilliance really shows.
Yeah.
They're not just putting different ideas next to each other, they're weaving them together to make this complex tapestry of thought.
So for those of us who aren't math experts,
Yeah.
what's the point of this proof? I remember it was about sets or something.
Yeah, it is. So
Okay.
basically, Russell's proof shows that the power set of any set is always bigger than the original set.
Okay.
It's a really important concept in set theory, but what matters here isn't the math itself.
Gotcha.
It's what it means. even in math, where things seem so certain, things aren't always what they appear.
Huh.
There are paradoxes, contradictions, and things are more complex than we think.
So it's like the author is saying that even in a world of logic and rules, there's still room for mystery and the unknown.
Exactly. And that connects back to the whole idea of the hypersphere. It's this weird, multidimensional place where our normal rules don't work.
Right.
By including Russell's proof, the author might be suggesting that our own universe could be way more complex and strange than we can even understand.
Okay, so we've got Trump satire, existential dread, and a bit of mind-bending math.
Yeah.
What comes next in this crazy chapter?
Well, this is where the structure gets even more broken up.
Okay.
The story jumps from Russell's proof to a scene with Grothendieck in the Pyrenees, and then suddenly we're on a skeletal island with a Kramer statue.
What?
It's like the author's trying to show the chaos of the hypersphere.
Through the chapter itself.
Yeah, through the way it's written.
That's a lot to follow.
It is.
But it's also strangely interesting.
Yeah.
It's like you're constantly being pulled in different directions, and you have to figure out where you are with each new scene.
And I think that feeling of disorientation is part of the point. It makes us question our assumptions about how stories should be told and how reality is supposed to work.
It's like the author wants us to accept the ambiguity, to find meaning in the mess, instead of looking for a neat ending.
Exactly.
And then in the middle of all this philosophy and math, we meet a character named Damien, who seems to be dealing with a very human problem.
Right.
He's totally obsessed with his dead lover.
Brucey Wissy.
Brucey Wissy, yeah. And his story plays out against this backdrop of all the hypersphere craziness.
Damien's story is really interesting because it brings in a lot of emotion to the chapter.
Okay.
We've been talking about these big concepts like power and determinism and what reality even is.
Right.
But Damien's story brings us back to these raw experiences.
Like what?
Grief and longing.
Yeah, I was struck by how different Damien's obsessive love is from Trump's ambition. They're both driven by these strong forces, but their motivations are so different.
And the effects of their actions are different too.
Right, and I think that contrast is really important for understanding what the author is trying to say.
Okay.
Trump wanting power leads to destruction and chaos.
On a huge scale.
Yeah, but Damien's obsession is more internal. It's about holding on to the memory of someone he lost.
It makes you wonder, can obsession ever be a good thing?
Or is it always going to be destructive?
Yeah.
That really resonated with me. The chapter doesn't give us a simple answer.
Right.
But it definitely makes us think about the different ways we deal with loss.
And that line between remembering someone and being obsessed with them.
It reminds us that even in this weird satirical world of the hypersphere, human emotions are still a powerful force.
Definitely.
Love, grief, desire.
They're universal.
They transcend all this mind-bending stuff.
Exactly.
And speaking of mind-bending, the chapter takes another sudden turn near the end.
Oh, yeah.
This last section, called Dust, it describes Second Neptune. It's desolate.
Yeah.
There are crystals flying through the sky and these hoarding porpoise superpods.
I love that phrase.
Churning the sea.
It's a vivid image.
It's vivid and creepy all at once.
This change in tone is jarring.
Yeah.
It's like the author is saying, okay, we've explored the big ideas. Now let's look at what's left.
Yeah.
And what's left is this feeling of emptiness.
Right.
Like the world has been stripped of meaning.
And then all of a sudden, the narrator starts thinking about a song.
Out of nowhere.
It's this burst of emotion in this otherwise empty landscape.
I think that song is a really important symbol.
Okay.
It suggests that even when everything seems meaningless, even when we're surrounded by this decay, there's still something inside us.
Okay.
Maybe it's the human spirit, maybe it's art.
Maybe it's something else.
Yeah, but it won't be extinguished.
And then that's it. The chapter just ends.
Abruptly.
No explanation. Just, hey.
It's like being cut off in the middle of a sentence, hanging on the edge of a cliff.
That ending is frustrating.
It is.
But it's also kind of brilliant.
It is. It forces us to realize that we don't understand everything.
Yeah.
We want neat conclusions.
Right.
But life, especially in a place like the Hypersphere, doesn't always give us that.
So we've gone through this incredibly dense chapter.
Yeah.
We've encountered satire and philosophy and math.
And despair. What does it all mean?
I don't think there's one right answer. And that's what makes this chapter so interesting.
Okay.
It's not about giving us easy answers.
All right.
It's about pushing us to ask these big, difficult questions about reality, about how we see things.
And about what it means to be human.
Exactly.
It's like the author is saying, embrace the ambiguity.
Find meaning in the chaos.
And keep searching for those moments.
You have those hey moments.
That make us question everything we thought we knew. This chapter was a real head-scratcher.
Definitely.
But, I kind of like that.
It was exciting to be confused.
I can see that.
It reminds us that there's still so much we don't know. And not everything has to be simple.
That's a good point, the chapter not giving us easy answers.
Yeah.
That's what makes it so strong.
Right. It makes us deal with the ambiguity, the uncertainty.
Right.
And it makes us realize that sometimes the questions themselves are what's important. And this all goes back to the Hypersphere.
Oh, yeah.
This strange place.
With its own rule.
Where our rules don't work.
It makes you think.
It's like the author saying, hey, maybe our universe is way more complex than we think.
Yeah, maybe even more wondrous.
So let's bring it back to you, the listener.
Okay.
What did you think of this crazy chapter?
Yeah, what stood out to you?
Did it confuse you? Intrigue you?
Maybe even scare you a little?
If you're someone who needs a straightforward story with a clear ending,
this chapter is not for you.
Yeah, but if you're willing to embrace the weirdness, the surreal,
That's challenge.
Then this chapter is a must-read.
It really shows the power of unconventional storytelling.
Right, and how much we love the unknown.
Yeah.
It reminds us that literature isn't just about entertainment. It can make us explore the biggest mysteries.
Yeah, it can challenge what we think we know.
And it can help us understand ourselves and the universe better.
And to leave you with a final thought. If our reality is just one of many in this vast hypersphere, does that make our experiences less important?
Or does it make them even more special?
Think about that.
Yeah, go back to the book.
Keep exploring the hypersphere.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.